Welcome back to Creepy Confidential. I'm your host, Noelle, your resident weirdo Wisconsinite. I open case files on my favorite cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and other worldly creepy. Bringing you new cases, live broadcasts, local lore, and in Season 2, we bring you the Cult of the Month. So get ready, creeps. It's Season 2 of Creepy Confidential. Welcome to the Cult of the Month. Each month we spend a little more time than usual so that we can discuss a cult that has had our attention for the entire month. Some of our listeners may not have been exposed to these types of things, either due to age, location, or were shielded from the horrors of what happens in these groups. We will be exposing the headlines, audio bites, and background on these groups to not only make listeners aware that they exist, but to keep their eyes open to possible cult behavior around them. We will break down the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and show you how this group's history has been woven into our pop culture through movies, music, and fashion. Art imitates life. Due to the information in the Cult of the Month episodes, we will start with a disclaimer. Warning, this episode is intended for mature audiences. It contains graphic descriptions of crime scenes, mass suicide, and cult behavior. March 26, 1997, 3:15 p.m. San Diego 911 receives an anonymous tip. This individual is stating that they are reporting a mass suicide and that they can provide the address. A lone deputy arrives in Rancho Sante Fe, California at a quiet mansion in a gated community. 18241 Colina Norte. A pungent odor greets his olfactory senses. He opens a door he was informed would be left unlocked. His unassisted walkthrough finds no survivors. He goes from room to room, finding body after body. The remains are starting to undergo early stages of decomposition due to the warm spring of the California season. Every individual was positioned and draped in a ritualistic manner. Their matching black Nike trainers visual in a purple cloth over their heads and torsos. 39 bodies would be found. Each member wore an individual embroidered triangular patch sewn onto the arm of their matching uniforms, a black patch depicting cascading stars and words that read, "Heaven's Gate Away Team."
The videotape discovered and observed, the information obtained from sources all indicate that this was a voluntary situation. They ingested the drugs on their own. They may or may not have been influenced, but we'll never know that. But at this point, this is considered a mass suicide investigation.
Yes, sir, right here.
What's up, creeps? Welcome to 2023, and we're starting it off with a very intense episode. Were any of our listeners out there alive during this cult's final days? I was 14. However, I was young enough that my folks shielded me from the news when it came to cults or general bad things. However, I do remember things like this happening on the TV. People were usually glued to it. When it comes to this group, there is a lot to unpack, and it had my attention for a very, very long time. I'm sure the Hubs, aka Mr. Creep, was starting to get a little concerned. I believe his concern went slightly up, especially after I wrote the remaining two members and actually found a way to request class material. So the original website is still active and untouched. It has that flashing red alert across the top of it. It looks like it, of course, is straight from the late 90s. That hail bop brings closure to Heaven's Gate. It's eerie just to know that the last things they did, one of them was updating this website. Before I jump into an ADD-induced rambling about everything I found, let me put everything into a more organized manner for some mental digestion. Okay? So let's start. What are we going to be talking about? Heaven's Gate. Now, they became a household name back in 1997 when 39 members committed mass suicide to leave their bodies and move on to, quote, the level above human. Their bodies were broadcast on live TV while the police walked through this Rancho Sante Fe mansion. A man in a biohazard suit can be seen walking from room to room with bodies in black tracksuits laid neatly in beds with purple shrouds draped over them, perfectly tucked in, ritualistically tucked in. Laid flat in their beds, dressed neatly, purple shrouds, and motionless. IDs in their pocket, $5.75 in their pocket, and a small bag of their belongings, their flight bag, if you will. So I've been waiting to talk about this for quite some time. Now, I've been holding on to the little secret of that I contacted a cult. Not really a secret, but one of those things where I'm like, gee, I wonder about, all these cults that you hear about. Do they still exist? Is there like one random member who's trying to, get the gang back together again, that kind of thing? So when I was scrolling through their website, you can go through all of their digital learning material, I will put it that way. And there's a little area that has their email address and a way to be contacted if you would like a hard copy of their anthology, their book. Now, this isn't like a go to Barnes & Noble kind of book. Okay, you have to, it's one of those kind of things, which is crazy. Now, there is a bound, like one of those ring binder bound versions of class material in a really cool museum out in California. Now, I say really cool because it's like a little time capsule, but I really wanted to figure out a way to see if I could contact them. So I've been waiting to discuss how I came in possession of my Heaven's Gate class material anthology book that was sent to me by Heaven's Gate. That's right, folks, the Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate is still active, although only 2 official members. Now, I contacted them through the mail. It's a very small capacity that they're operating. It's out of Arizona, it turns out, under the TELA organization, the Evolutionary Level Above Human. That's what that stands for. Now, what they did was when they decided to leave their vehicles, they left someone in charge and trusted to continue the message. More drama on that later. I was watching my favorite show, CSI. The old CSI Las Vegas, not the new garbage that they call CSI. CSI Las Vegas. And an episode started by finding cult members in an underground bunker that had consumed a beverage to commit a small-scale mass suicide with their following, people being a galactic search, for their inner answers. Now, the episode is called CSI Las Vegas Shooting Stars. It's a great episode. Now, around that time, I had my trusty laptop open and saw that the Heaven's Gate website was still up. I scrolled and looked for the email. Now, I decided I need to write them an email. I'm excited just thinking about it. So I wrote them an email thinking I'm never going to hear back. I used an old email, kept it short and sweet, didn't write anything, crazy. 2 minutes, someone wrote me back telling me the address to inquire for materials and a price that they were charging for said materials. Cash only, of course. I placed my cash in an envelope, assuming I would never see it again, and that the money was just merely for my entertainment value at this point. A few weeks went by. I opened my mailbox to see a large padded envelope from TELAH in Arizona. At the time, not knowing what the letters represented, now I know, I assumed that maybe I had, wrote for something and forgotten about it. I had just started my research on this cult. And then I realized. My heart raced and I opened the envelope and a glossy purple book laid inside. The book is titled How and When Heaven's Gate may be entered, the door to the physical kingdom level above human. An anthology of materials. No author noted. That's right, folks. A cult sent me their class material. I know, I'm nuts. I'm completely nuts, and that's okay. Now, I just thought it was crazy that here I am receiving class material from a cult that I was told no longer exists. So it kind of lets you know, just because you're told that doesn't mean that that is true. So now that we're past my little giddy excitement of how I came in possession of the Heaven's Gate class material and anthology, let's start where we should start. Let's break it down. So who were the founding members of Heaven's Gate? Two people were what got this whole thing kicked off. Marshall Herff Applewhite Jr. and Bonnie Lou Nettles, more famously known as Doe and T, or T and Doe, with T being the, quote, older member. Air quotes on purpose, because that's kind of what they called their person that's leading the other member, like they felt that she had that power. And that Doe was basically T's underling in a way. Now, why her underling? And why is it the older member you talk? So let's talk about that some more. Marshall met Bonnie just as his life was on a major tilt-a-whirl, and she was working as a nurse, and her life was also tipping over. He went from being married, children, an instructor at a university, and an up-and-coming opera performer who was really making a name for himself. Then a life shift, where he started to descend into quote-unquote darkness. Resigning from his job, getting a divorce, struggling with his sexuality, which was not an okay topic back then, considering they were, back then, trying to heal people from homosexuality, and then a little mental health hiccup where he found himself checked in for a small stay. Now, Bonnie went from being married with 4 children and a successful career as a nurse to believing a 19th century monk was communicating with her that she would meet a mysterious, tall man with a fair complexion. She was very into seance readings, astrology, and the occult. Allegedly, these two met while he was seeing someone in the hospital, and she instantly saw Marshall as the man that the monk had described. Now, what is Heaven's Gate? Now, if you look up the description, they put it under a New Age religious group, a UFO religion. Now, Cliff's Notes interpretation on my behalf of their beliefs, they believe that they could transform themselves into immortal extraterrestrial beings by rejecting their human vehicle. That's right, just like my Kia, that type of vehicle. And they would ascend into heaven, aka, air quotes, that kind of thing. Now, this is where we talk about the heaven they called the evolutionary level above human. What we like to call them now, a cult. Very true. Now, in the early days, they were known as Human Individual Metamorphosis, also Total Overcomers Anonymous. And then finally, the name that we all have come to know and fear, I'll say, Heaven's Gate. Now, when did this whole thing kick off? So after Doe and T started their crazy enlightenment journeys as they were leaving their life behind, or as I imagine, a Hunter S. Thompson style straight off the deep end journey into their made-up alien religion, they started gathering groups back as early as 1974. After they dreamt up their idea at a little sleepover camping trip at Gold Beach, Oregon, of course. Seems like all the crazy girls are there. Anyway, this has many strings. Oregon just has so many strings to the beginnings of cults and weirdos. We'll talk about more of that in other episodes. So the now infamous meeting at Walport, that was then called the Bayshore Inn. After they distributed their flyers and posted around town where they would be, the meeting commenced with over 150 people coming to see what they were all about. Now, thankfully, no one from this town was amongst those lost in that final departure and gruesome scene in California. However, following the meeting, nearly 24 locals disappeared, many known to have sold off their belongings. When locals inquired with the authorities, they were essentially told that because they're adults, they can do whatever they want. There's no laws being broken, that they decided to sell all their stuff and leave. When researching, I found an interesting account that I had never come across before. From the Oregon Coast Beach Connection, they have a website. I'd like to read a quote from that report. They wrote after the members made one last trip to the resort, as they kept very detailed logs of occasions and finances for everything they spent. And I quote, "With all members dressed in the same outfits and matching close-cropped hair, they freaked out employees. Beyond that, they did everything in unison, such as getting up at the same exact minute and showering at the same time. This resulted in the hotel running out of hot water a little after 5 a.m. They brought in cases of their own food, mostly bland things like bread and fruit pies. Employees also noted that while they left the rooms immaculate, they left behind odd little balls of different colored lint." End quote. Balls of lint, you don't say. So let's talk about where. Other than California, this group had a history of being vagabonds for quite some time prior to the final destination, including Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon we just talked about, and California are just some of the known. The members, of course, were not allowed to divulge where they resided. The most famous, of course, is a huge mansion they rented out for $7,000 a month in Rancho Sante Fe. The members were building websites, other web projects, and many were highly educated and bright individuals, able to bring in income. And one even had a trust fund to help finance this type of thing. The mansion is huge. With pool, tennis courts, and sprawling gardens, this, of course, place has been demolished. And the road names have been changed. It seems that no one wanted to live in a mansion where 39 cult members had committed a mass suicide. So let's talk about the why. When listening to all the crazy videos and audio, the why is very much an out-of-this-world answer. This group could have just existed on and on as a collection of people that were truly waiting to be beamed up by aliens. However, there is so much history with skews to the timeline here and there, and it all started with Doe and T on a journey for enlightenment. Both had lives that were taking a turn, and I feel in each other it fed the fire for something like this to form. Within the reading of the Bible, specifically the book of Revelations, they felt that they were the quote-unquote the two that mentioned that would be martyred, rise from the dead after 3 days, and ascend in a cloud of light. The two had told their group that this was biblical terms for a spaceship. Then a few days after they ascended, the students would be carried away in a spaceship. However, things took a turn. So, also behind the scenes, while everyone else had completely cut ties with everyone, T, the one above them all, had 2 little skeletons in her closet. One, she was secretly writing to her daughter every month, and also including money that was coming from the group, unbeknownst to the group or Doe until later. This is known because of interviews conducted with her daughter recounting these letters and just how angry she was when the second phase of T's issues came to light. She was dying. Her human vehicle was failing from cancer. She had already lost an eye, and by the time they took her to a medical facility, it was too late. Liver cancer would take her. This broke all the structure that had been built over the years, that Doe and T alone would bring the other members to the stars where they belonged. After listening to a voice recording that was sent to T's daughter, it's of Doe talking to her about how much of a chicken he is, and he actually does use that word, that he didn't reach out to her about her mother, that she had passed, but that her mother had no pain. You can hear his voice cracking. You can hear his pain. You get a sense that he is transforming second to second into a different person, a cult leader that we all saw. He went off the deep end. His structure was gone. His light was gone. His love, in a family sense, was gone. I felt sorry for him. I'll admit, I heard the voice, and you know how when you can hear somebody that they're starting to cry, but they're trying to keep it back, you could hear it. And I'll be honest, for a half a second, I felt sorry for him when I heard it. I could feel his heartbreak. And knowing that, I feel this shift in the tracks of this group is what took them to the edge. The trust has been built, the long game has now shifted to the short game, and the engines were stoked. So let's talk about the how. All right, we're kind of rounding into the last lap here. Just stay with me. I know there's a lot going on. The history is behind them. The catalyst was added, and now we head towards the end for this group of lost souls. Hale-Bopp Comet was seen by a political science professor named Courtney Brown and broadcast onto the radio. And another catalyst was added that perhaps a structure was seen following the tail of the comet that is seen once every 2,000 years. What is this structure, you ask? A massive alien ship was hypothesized on a radio broadcast by this professor. This was assigned to Marshall. This was it. It's T. Now, Hale, of the comet's namesake, would later state that this structure was simply a massive 8.5 magnitude star. Oops. Brown was wrong. Not good. Now, the star name, if you want to look it up, is SAO 141894. That's the actual star name. Now, the stage is set. This is it. Doe made broadcasts about how the planet was about to be recycled, and the only way to survive was through him. They purchased alien abduction insurance that would pay out $1 million per person for up to 50 people. The policy covered abduction, impregnation, or death by aliens. Days prior, members filmed their exit interviews, allowing them to give any closing words before their departure. Now, this is where I really discovered how Marshall was able to get them. You can see doubt, low confidence. They all kind of have that slouchy, darting, I don't know. It's unsure is what I'm looking for. And they all have that little bit of odd about them that society, I'm sure, had something to say about. Now, coming from a weirdo, I am a weirdo. People have treated me different. I get it. I've been there. Bullies, people on the streets, and even family can make even the tiniest bit of self-doubt grow to a mountain after years of eating their crap. It was scary to see how ready they were to leave this world, to be honest. They were excited even. Giddy. In addition to these exit videos, their website was updated with the current info, links of the teachings and transcripts, even in different languages. In their mansion, aka their ship, the log that kept the comings and goings of every member was updated. A column that included the ETA of their arrival back. Their comms center daily log lists each member as they sign out for one last time. Some with a simple NA in that ETA column, and others that would write, quote, never. 39 members took a little under 2 hours to sign out. Uniforms were donned, small bags were packed, a $5 bill and 3/4 were placed into their pockets. Packages mailed out to the elite few containing the exit interviews and Doe's final message. Everything kicked off starting between the estimated dates of March 22nd to the 26th. 3 groups. They didn't all die at the same time. Groups of 15, 15, and then 9. 15 begin by stirring a large dose of phenobarbital into their pudding or applesauce, followed by a vodka beverage chaser. They are laid in their beds with a plastic bag placed over their head to induce asphyxia. After they have passed, the bag is removed, they are positioned, and a purple shroud is placed over their heads. The second 15 repeats the same process. For the last group, 7 members, including Applewhite, are aided through the process. The last 2 members are found in their beds with their bags still over their head and no purple shroud. March 25th, one of the trusted, Rio D'Angelo, receives their package containing the VHS tapes with a message from Applewhite that they have left their vehicles. He gets in a cab and takes a trip to California. He arrives at the residence in Rancho and opens the door that he was informed would be left unlocked. D'Angelo records a non-verbal walkthrough to record his findings. Remember that anonymous phone call I mentioned in the beginning? It was D'Angelo. Following the discovery, the families were contacted, autopsies performed on every body, and the family given the choice to have their body of their family member shipped or to have them cremated and the ashes shipped to them. Either way, the loved one they had missed had no contact with them and never given the chance of closure to see them alive one more time, left with nothing but questions and heartache.